In the last decade or so, Alabama has consistently produced star running backs. Guys like Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, Bo Scarborough, and most recently Brian Robinson. I could probably name a couple more if I wanted to, but the subject of today's video was supposed to be the next one in line. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, arguably the top back in his recruiting class, and had unlimited potential. Unfortunately, as we flash forward ahead to 2022, he's barely playing right now, he's had some tragic cards dealt his way, and unfortunately, he's going to go down as a bust. In today's video though, we're going to shed a positive light on him as we're going to tell his entire story, go through how he became a 5-star recruit, his career at Bama, the events that will lead to that label, and what I think will happen to him next. But before we get started, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started. So you're probably wondering who the subject of today's video is, and it is none other than Alabama running back Trey Sanders. But in order to understand what went wrong, we first need to go back in time. Trey Sanders grew up in the Sunshine State of Florida and played football from a very young age. Eventually, he got to Port St. Joe High School in Florida, and he rushed for more than 1,000 yards and earned all-state honors as a freshman. He was immediately put on recruiting radars and became one of the top freshman recruits in all of football. He was actually so good that after his freshman year, he chose to go to Alabama. Now that he had chosen a big-time school just 1 year into high school, he would now move up to a higher level of competition. He would transfer to the prestigious IMG Academy, and at the time, his goal was to get more work there. It was tough sledding at first, as for the first few months he didn't get more than 8 carries a game, and that was because of an ankle injury and the fact that he had moved to the safety position. But then, when he was healthy, they moved him back to running back, and he got 197 yards on 17 carries in a breakout performance, and head coach Kevin Wright said, quote, "That's when I knew Trey had a chance to be special." He finished his sophomore year averaging 9.6 yards per carry, but now he'd be joined by some other star players in the backfield. Future Oklahoma and Utah running back TJ Pledger came in, and blue chip recruit Noah Cain. As some of you know, Noah Cain was a big time recruit who originally went to Penn State before transferring to LSU, and now Sanders would have to share the backfield with him. They became one of the best high school backfield duos ever, and they were actually really good friends. Trey said, quote, "People tend to think we're just fronting for the camera, but we actually hang out all the time. We're always just kicking it, and it's not even about football. It's about us making a way out for ourselves and our family, and to get to the highest level and play the game we love." At the time, former Auburn superstar running back Cadillac Williams joined the staff and compared Trey Sanders to Ronnie Brown. Sanders loved the comparison and loved Coach Cadillac. He said, quote, "I couldn't think of a better running backs coach to have." Sanders was a superstar, but he would eventually change his recruiting direction as he had already been committed to Bama for 2 years, but he decided to drop his commitment and consider a new school. He took unofficial visits to Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Miami, and Texas, and it would ultimately come down to Georgia and Alabama. After a long-awaited commitment, he decided to choose Saban on signing day. As his dad said, quote, "It was close. It was really close. But in the end, his heart was with Bama. It really was." Georgia made a serious push as their coaches made some valid points, and they did a good job recruiting him, but in the end, his heart was just with Bama. He was now headed to the Tide, and scouts were really high on him. One scout said, quote, "He's an impact player at the high-end Power 5 level and a future NFL draft pick with early round upside." They compared him to former Indiana and Chicago Bears running back Jordan Howard. That was a pretty solid comparison, as Howard was an All-American and has had a long NFL career. According to 24/7 Sports, Sanders was a 5-star recruit, the #1 running back, and the 6th best player in the class of 2019. Would he become the next great Alabama back, or would something go wrong? Sanders would arrive at Alabama with former IMG teammate and 5-star offensive lineman Evan Neal, and he had high expectations for himself. He said, quote, "As a freshman at Alabama, I do plan on winning the Heisman, nothing less. If I come short, I'll be a finalist. I'll be in New York next year, and I'm looking forward to it." It's a very interesting statement for a player like him to make, and as we all know, it would not end up happening. It more than likely would not have happened no matter what, but he would get hurt in fall camp and missed his entire freshman year. This was definitely a bad break for him, but he was going to bounce back in a big way in 2020, right? This is when his life would change forever, as one day he was traveling with his brother in northern Florida when they got into a serious car accident. Trey's brother said, quote, "I look over and see my brother and he's passed out. The first thing you think is like, oh my gosh, he's gone. And at the time, I just started to freak out." Trey would eventually regain consciousness in a matter of seconds. However, he was in significant pain. When Sanders got to the hospital, they discovered he had a broken pelvis, soft tissue injuries, and internal organ injury. Some thought that Trey would hang up the cleats, and no one would have honestly blamed him, but Sanders was not going to give up this quick. He said, quote, "This is just another obstacle in the road that we're going to have to jump over. You're always going to face stuff like this in life, and it's up to you if you want to jump over that hurdle or just leave it. The one thing about life is you leave it. You're going to have to jump sooner or later, so let's go ahead and get this obstacle out of the way and get back to it. Obviously, the injury and the setbacks would fuel Trey to get better, and his brother would move in with him to help him get back on his feet. He had 10 months of excruciating rehab, but finally, he found himself back on the football field. The redshirt sophomore would score his first career touchdown during Alabama's season opener against Miami. While it was a great moment, he was not where he wanted to be, as he was a little bit buried on the depth chart. He was playing behind Brian Robinson Jr., Roydell Williams, and Jace McClellan. Trey's workload began to decrease substantially as the season continued, and he had a tough game against Mercer, as he only ran the ball for 30 yards and a fumble. Over the next 6 games, he'd only have 12 combined carries, but this was not going to defeat his spirit. His brother said, quote, "I talked to Trey a lot during that time, and our message was always just keep grinding." He never really showed frustration or talked about it. It was like he was just waiting for his time, and he knew that once his name was called, he was going to be ready. Unfortunately for Bama, both Roydell Williams and Jace McClellan would get hurt, and Sanders would now have to step up. And this was not some nonchalant moment. This was the biggest game of the year to that point. During the Iron Bowl game against Auburn, Brian Robinson also got hurt, and all of a sudden Sanders went from getting benched and being the 4th string running back to taking over when the team was trailing with their playoff hopes on the line. It was in this game where he'd play well and show his potential, and this meant everything to him. As we all know, Bryce Young would lead his team on a game-winning drive, and he found Ja'Cory Brooks in the end zone for a touchdown. In the process, though, Sanders had a couple of crucial plays, and this helped them beat the Tigers 24-22, where they would advance to the SEC title game to play against Georgia. As we all know, they ended up dominating that, and they got to the playoff, where they eventually reached the title game and then lost in a rematch to Georgia. This was a huge moment for him, and Alabama head coach Nick Saban was super proud of him. As he said, quote, "I think Trey has been through a lot. I think everybody knows the adversity he's had to overcome with an injury and a car accident. I think he's done a good job for us, and we have a lot of confidence in him moving forward." Sanders' season was not over yet, though. As I said, they got to the playoff, and he'd have his best game of the season against the Cincinnati Bearcats. He rushed the ball 14 times for 67 yards, as the Tide would win 27-6. Brian Robinson would be back for the national title game, and he'd get the majority of the workload, but Sanders would still carry the ball 2 times for 5 yards, and also had a catch. Not many players can say they've played in the championship game, so good for him. On the 2021 season, Sanders ran the ball 72 times for 314 yards and 2 scores, with 6 catches for 55 yards out of the backfield. He wasn't putting up the numbers he was expected to do, but it was a complete miracle that he had gotten to this point to begin with, and everyone was proud of him. Going into 2022, Brian Robinson had left for the NFL, and there was now going to be a void at the running back spot. Unfortunately for Sanders, though, he would get buried on the depth chart. Saban would bring in Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech, and both Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams returned. Big-time recruit Jamarian Miller also came in, and this has led Sanders to become the 5th string running back. On the season, he only ran the ball 9 times for 53 yards, but he at least got a touchdown. Unfortunately, right now, it doesn't look like his role is going to be very much, and Saban is preferring to play the younger players instead. With him missing his first 2 years of college and the whole extra 2020 season, Sanders could play football for a couple more years, but I think it'll need to be at a different school. I think Nick Saban has extreme respect for him, but it's obvious with who he's giving minutes to and how the depth chart comes out that he doesn't have full confidence in Sanders and thinks other players are better for the program. I don't think it's Sanders' fault, but I think he needs to transfer. I'd love to see him go back to a Florida school or even just a Group of 5 school and put up numbers and have a memorable career. I've always been a huge fan of Trey, and ever since he had that terrible accident, I've been rooting for him even harder. I wish his time in Alabama would have worked out, but knowing how strong his faith and work ethic is, he's definitely going to make it far in life, and I don't think his football career is quite over yet. Unfortunately, though, many are going to label him as a 5-star bust, but when you put the football stats aside, the guy is not a bust, and I consider him a winner in life. But what do you think? If you're an Alabama fan, what do you think has gone wrong for Sanders? Who is another player who had a lot of hype that I could take a look at next? And give me another topic, team, situation, or anything I can cover in my next video. Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support the channel, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about what happened to HaHa Clinton Dix. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.